地を踏みしめて君は目覚めてゆく天使の微笑みで連れ出して孤独でも一人じゃないさ生まれてきたことに必ず意味がある You can smile again 太陽浴びて You can fly away 世界は君の輝きを待ってる大地を踏みしめて君は目覚めてゆく天使の微笑みで連れ出して始まりはいつでも遅くないさ何度でも立ち上がれ
This is episode 2 of the MultiMangaverse. Welcome to it. My name is Alan. Hoping that you're doing well whenever you listen to this, wherever you may be in the world. If you're a returning listener, welcome back to the MultiMangaverse. If you're new, in the description there will be a link to episode 1, so you can hit the pause button, go back and listen to episode 1, and then come back to join us for episode 2. So the first 4 episodes of this series will be looking at the first 4 volumes of the manga hunterxhunter or hunterxhunter, created by Yoshihiro Togashi way back in 1998 and has been serialized in Weekly Shonen Jump ever since, although on and off because the manga has been put on hiatus. It's actually away right now on a current hiatus, I think since 2019, and this is because Togashi has had ongoing health problems, I think, with his back because of the work that he does as a mangaka. So the manga has been on and off, but there has been some signs of life on Twitter. I believe my friend Marco has been sending me pictures from Togashi's Twitter account, showing pictures of him doing some sketches, some drawings, and perhaps by the end of this year maybe the series will resume, hopefully. So maybe let's do a quick recap of volume 1 before we jump into volume 2. So in volume 1 we met our main character, the almost 12-year-old boy Gon Freaks, who wants to become a hunter and search for his father, Jing Freaks, who is a famous hunter. Now in the world of hunter, a hunter is a special individual who works as an explorer, a discoverer, treasure seeker, maybe preserves wildlife, becomes an archaeologist, maybe even fights crimes and chases after dangerous criminals. And so Gon, in order to become a hunter, he must apply for a hunter license. And in order to get the license, he must pass what is known as the hunter exam. So he's got his application form. His aunt Mito, who is Jing's cousin, she reluctantly signs the application form because she's aware of how dangerous the life of a hunter is, her cousin being one, and so she just wanted to protect Gon, keeping the information about his father away from him. But Gon, at some point in the past, found out about his father because he met a student of Jing named Kaito, who is a hunter. And at the time, Kaito was on Gon's home island, Whale Island, looking for Jing Freaks. And he told Gon about his father and told him some of Jing's accomplishments as a hunter and why he is regarded as a high-level hunter, what's known as a triple star hunter. and although Jing has not officially gone on to apply for the rank of triple star hunter, he is at that level. So Gon has been aware of his father being a hunter, and that has not stopped him from wanting to become one. And so he leaves Whale Island, he gets on a ship which will take him to the location of the hunter exam. On the ship he meets 2 other people who are aiming to become hunters themselves. There's Leorio, who wants to become a hunter in order to make a lot of money, to become a doctor and be able to cure people. And then there's Kurapika, who wants to become a blacklist hunter, specifically because he wants to chase after a group of criminals known as the Phantom Troop, who killed Kurapika's clan members. Kurapika was a member of a clan known as the Kuruta clan, who are known for having eyes that turn scarlet when their emotions get really high, and if that person were to die while their eyes are that scarlet color, their eyes remain scarlet. And so the Phantom Troop, they killed all those clan members and they plucked out their eyes and have had them this whole time. So Kurapika is on a quest for revenge to get those eyes back from the Phantom Troop. So the ship gets them to one place where Gon, Kurapika and Leorio have to pass a number of tests, which will then take them to the actual location of the hunter exam. And once they get to that place, it's like a tunnel which they reach by elevator from a restaurant. So they get into the tunnel, they meet all the other examinees as well as the examiner, a man named Satotsu, who will be their guide for the first phase of the exam, which involves them running through the tunnel for quite a long distance. He doesn't tell them where they're going or how long it'll take to get there. They just have to follow him through the tunnel. Eventually, they get to the end of the tunnel and they spill out into what's known as the Milsea wetlands or Swindler's Swamp, which is home to a number of dangerous creatures. And it doesn't take very long for the examinees to meet some of these dangerous creatures, and before long several examinees are killed in the wetlands. And one of these examinees adds to this by going after the other examinees. This examinee is known as, his name is Hisoka, the magician. And volume 1 ended with Hisoka reaching Leorio and Kurapika, aiming to kill them. Now, because he's decided to play examiner. So volume 2, which is called A Struggle in the Mist, was released on the 2nd of September in 1998 in Japan, and would then get translated into English by Viz Media and released on the 4th of May 2005. It contains chapters 9 to 17 and continues the first story arc of Hunter x Hunter, the Hunter Exam. So let's get right into it. Chapter 9, A Struggle in the Mist, picks up from where chapter 8 ended. Kurapika, Leorio, and other examinees, they're seeing Hisoka step out of the fog, and he's just stepped out and there's a field of dead examinees, others are injured, and Hisoka, he's got his deck of playing cards, he's shuffling them as he's making his way there, and he says he was going to wait until the second phase, but this first phase has gotten boring, so he's just decided to speed things up a little and test the abilities of the participants. Now, one of the participants points out that they've lost sight of the examiner Satotsu, and this must mean that everyone who's here has failed the exam, and he he's angry at Hisoka. He's asking, why are you doing this? You shouldn't be doing this. And unfortunately for this guy, he gets a card thrown in his face and he drops it dead on the spot. So the rest of the examinees, they get their weapons, they surround Hisoka, and they don't believe that he should be a hunter after what he's done. But Hisoka, he's not paying them any attention. He just looks at his cards, he draws one, and it's the 4 of hearts. Now in countries like Japan, the number 4 is very significant. It's not looked at very positively because it's associated with death. One of the ways to pronounce the number 4 in Japanese I should say, is shi. An example, shi is also, I guess, another word for death. So an example would be Shinigami, which could mean god of death or death god. So you already know what's going to happen now that he's picked up this card, 4 of hearts. And Hisoka proceeds to kill all those examinees who have surrounded him with that one card. Faces are sliced, throats are slit, people are dropping dead, left, right and center, and by the end we see Hisoka surrounded by dead bodies. And then he turns around and he notices that there are 3 people who are still alive. That's Leorio, that's Kurapika, and examinee number 76, Cherry, the martial artist. And Hisoka starts making his way towards them. So Cherry, he thinks fast and he whispers to the other 2. He suggests that they split up and run away from Hisoka, because it would be a waste to die out here when each of them has their reason for becoming a hunter. And so Leorio and Kurapika, they agree to this. Cherry, he gives the signal and they run off in different directions. And Hisoka, he sees this and he commends them for coming up with a simple plan. And then he starts counting to 10, after which he'll decide which one he'll chase after first. But when he gets to number 10, he sees someone is making their way back. That someone is Leorio, and he's armed himself with a wooden club, and he tries to attack Hisoka, but Hisoka, he simply dodges and is about to attack Leorio, only for Hisoka to be struck in the face by the hook at the end of Gon's fishing rod. The hit is powerful enough to cut Hisoka just above his left eyebrow, and he notices that he's been hit, and he turns and he sees Gon close by. And Gon, the funny thing about this is the expression on his face. If I could describe it, it could be a combination of surprise and shock as well, because he's wide-eyed, his mouth is open, he's just standing there looking at Hisoka. And Hisoka, he compliments Gon for using a simple original weapon like a fishing rod, and he starts going for Gon. But Leorio's right there. He tries again to hit Hisoka, and for his trouble, Hisoka is sent flying by a left uppercut from Hisoka. And Leorio, he lands just a few meters behind Gon, out cold, unfortunately for Leorio. So Gon, he attempts to hit Hisoka with his fishing rod, but Hisoka is just too fast for him, and he appears right next to Gon with his left hand over Gon's throat. And for a moment things look very dire for Gon, and then Hisoka just lets him go, just like that. And the whole time Hisoka's got this creepy smile on his face. He's looking at Gon curiously, and then he just says, "Don't worry, Leorio is not dead, he's still alive, and he has passed, he is qualified." It's just very strange for Hisoka to say. And then he adds that Gon would make a good hunter, right? And then right after that, there's a beeping sound coming from Hisoka's pants pocket. He takes out what looks like it's like a cell phone, but it also has the screen with showing a GPS tracker. So whoever is called Hisoka tells him to hurry up because the second phase of the exam is about to start. So Hisoka tells the caller he's on the way. He ends the call. He picks up Leorio's body, carries it over one shoulder, and then he turns to Gon and asks him if he would be alright on his own. And Gon doesn't say a word, he just nods. And he watches Hisoka going back through the fog, carrying his friend over his shoulder. And the chapter ends with Gon just falling to his knees. He's still wide-eyed, his mouth is open, his heart is beating, and we just see behind him Kurapika calling his name, coming towards him to check if Gon is alright. And the last page of chapter 9 has a little note that says Gon has never seen anything quite like Hisoka before. Not anyone, anything like Hisoka. And I guess that could explain why he didn't say a word, he didn't do anything. He was, I guess he was just in complete shock at seeing this individual who came really close to killing him, ending his very short life. His quest to become a hunter almost ended, but he was just let go all of a sudden. So that was chapter 9. We move on to chapter 10, an unexpected task. Now the chapter kicks off in a forest somewhere in the Milsea wetlands, and we are shown the corpse of the unlucky participant number 76, the martial artist Cherry. He is hanging upside down from a tree with a card in his neck and another playing card in his forehead. And what sucks about this is just a few meters away we see Gon and Kurapika running past. They never notice, they never see the corpse of Cherry, and he's just left there. No one, there are two people right there who could have just turned to the side and they would have seen his body, but they ran past, never knowing what happened to Cherry. Especially Kurapika, who was with him, several moments ago, never knowing. So I just thought it was just sucked, just that's how you kick off the chapter. So the two boys are running through this forest. Gon is leading the way, thanks to his amazing sense of smell, which has picked up the scent of Leorio's unique cologne. Even if it's miles away, Gon's nose is good enough to pick it up. And there are also bodies along the way of dead animals, and Gon suspects that they might have tried to attack Hisoka, and unfortunately for them, things did not go their way. So as the boys are running, Gon asks Kurapika if he knows what Hisoka meant when he said that Leorio had passed and had qualified. This is despite the fact that Leorio hadn't laid a single hit on Hisoka. Hisoka had knocked him out. Only Gon had managed to hit Hisoka, so he doesn't understand what he meant. Kurapika, he doesn't know what Hisoka meant, but he thinks that maybe Hisoka was relying on his instincts, since he's such a skilled hunter, skilled enough to recognize someone who has the potential to become a hunter, someone like Gon. And this could be the reason why Hisoka decided not to kill him. And then Gon describes what he was experiencing when he confronted Hisoka. He says he felt a pressure while seeing Hisoka approach him. And while this was happening, he knew that there was no chance of him defeating Hisoka. He was certainly going to be killed. But oddly enough, Gon says that it was an exciting feeling at the same time. I don't know why that would be exciting. You're almost about to die, but I don't know. I guess I don't know if it happens in real life, if people can experience that, knowing that, oh, I'm about to die, but at the same time it's an exciting feeling. I don't know if that's possible, but that's what Gon was feeling here. So the boys, they make it to a clearing in the forest where Satotsu and the other examinees have gathered outside a big building. Within this building, there are sounds of growls and roars coming from the building. No one knows what's inside there. So Satotsu, he congratulates the examinees for reaching what's known as the Visca Forest Preserve, the location of the second phase of the hunter exam. And we get a look through the crowd. We see some of the examinees. We see Killua, we see Hanzo the ninja, we see the Amori brothers, Gereta the huntsman, Hisoka of course, Tonpa the rookie crusher, and that unknown man that we saw in the tunnel in volume 1, with the pins sticking out of his face, pins sticking out of his ear, there's some out of his shoulder. He's there as well. Then Satotsu tells the examinees that this is where he'll part ways with them. But then he notices that there are 150 examinees remaining now, which surprises him because he was expecting less than 100 to be left. However, he is also aware that the 2 examiners for the second phase, named Menchi and Buhara, they will be the reason why the number of examinees will drop to 50 or less, even if this group of examinees has exceeded his expectations. So Satotsu decides, okay, I'm going to stick around and see how things go for this second phase. Gon and Kurapika, they get there, they search through the crowd looking for Leorio, and Gon, he senses someone behind him, and he turns back. He sees Hisoka's looking at him just like several meters away. Hisoka's there, and he points to a tree where they find Leorio is resting. He's awake now, and he's also got a swollen cheek. His right cheek is really swollen, and he doesn't even remember what happened. And Gon and Kurapika, they look at each other, and they just decide, nah, we're not going to tell him to be too complicated. So they just keep quiet about that. Then Killua shows up, and he explains that people are gathered outside the building because they can't get into it. There's a sign on the door which says that the second phase of the exam will begin at noon. And there's just by the roof of the building, just above the entrance, there's a clock that's ticking away. The examinees have to just wait outside as time ticks by for the appointed time, not knowing what's inside with all the noises that are coming from the building. Then at noon, the doors open, and the source of the noise is revealed. It's coming from the stomach of one of the examiners, this big man. That's Buhara. He's this big man. He's seated on the floor behind Menchi, who is a slender woman who's seated on a couch in front of him. And the examinees, they just see this, and they are completely speechless because they were expecting maybe it's a bunch of wild animals or something, but no, it's just some dude who's very hungry. And Menchi, she announces that the second phase will involve cooking. Speaking of being hungry, the examinees must cook a meal good enough to please Buhara, and if it's good enough, he'll tell them that they passed. And then they'll have to cook another meal for Menchi. These 2 examiners are known as gourmet hunters, who travel the world in search of special ingredients and rare cuisines. Usually they are chefs as well, and they are dedicated to the creation of new delicacies. So in order to pass the second phase, the examinees have to satisfy both Menchi and Buhara. Now, upon hearing this, Leorio, he comments that he's never cooked before. And there are also a number of participants also, commenting that I've never cooked before as well. But Buhara, he just tells him that his favorite dish is roasted pig. And any pig that's found in the preserve will do. Doesn't matter as long as it's roasted. So the examinees, they race off into the forest to search for a pig to roast. And at this point, we find out that there are now 148 people who are taking part in this first stage of the second phase. Now, as the examinees are out in the forest searching for a pig, Menchi turns to Buhara and says, that was mean of you to tell them that any pig will do. There's only one kind of pig that lives in the preserve. And soon enough, the scene changes and we see Gon, Leorio and Kurapika. They encounter a herd of these pigs, these large ferocious creatures that are known as the Great Stamp, S-T-A-M-P, Great Stamp. They are incredibly fast for their size, and once they see the trio, they charge after them, who manage to evade the herd. And Gon, there's some focus on him. He notices there's a similar pressure that he's feeling as he's fighting off these Great Stamp, trying to avoid them. He's feeling a similar pressure to the one that he felt when he encountered Hisoka. But the difference being that pressure from Hisoka was more exciting than what he's feeling right now. And we see Gon has figured out how to neutralize the Great Stamp by hitting one of them over the forehead with his fishing rod. And he tells his friends that's their weak spot, which is protected by the Great Stamp's tough snouts that they've developed. And so once they've figured out the weak spot of the animal, they incapacitate a couple of them and they hurry back to the building with several other examinees who've also figured out how to deal with the Great Stamp. They've roasted the pig as well, and the chapter ends with Buhara being presented with a number of roasted pigs, and Satotsu is like sitting by one of the trees and he compliments the examinees for figuring out how to pass this first stage, the second phase. We move on to chapter 11, the inevitable outcome. The chapter begins with Buhara making quick work of all the roasted pigs that were brought to him. 70 roasted pigs were brought to him, and he chomps them down without any trouble. The examinees, they can't believe this because the man has eaten more than his own body weight. But fortunately for Buhara, those 70 pigs were enough to fill his belly, and he tells the examinees that they have passed. It's all good. And Menchi points out that he didn't do any judging on the quality of the food, but Buhara, he just says, you know what, it doesn't matter. I was hungry, they brought me food, I'm full now, they passed. So the two examiners, they've cut down the number of participants, and Menchi declares that 70 have qualified to move on to the second stage of the second phase. And Satotsu, who's still there watching from one of the trees, he doesn't think 70 is a bad number, and he comments that now the participants have to prepare meals for Menchi, And this won't be easy because she's one of the world's best chefs, known for making dishes that, they highlight her artistic style, her sophistication, and her contributions to the culinary culture have earned Menchi the title of Single Star Hunter. And she earned this at the age of 21. I believe that, 21. Now, a Single Star Hunter is one who has acquired a number of worthy achievements in one field. So in Menchi's case, Single Star Hunter for being an exceptional cook. So she announces that for this second stage, she wants sushi. And the examinees, I should say, they're speechless because they don't know what this is. And Menchi reveals that sushi is a dish from an island country. And like on the page where she's explaining what sushi is, there is a map of this country, and it's named, funny enough, Japan, Jappon, Japan. But no worries for the examinees. She directs them to several cooking stations that have been assembled and prepared for each of them. All the necessary kitchen utensils are present. The rice, there's some rice there, it's already been cooked for the examinees. And then Menchi points out that the kind of sushi that she likes is known as Nigiri sushi, which is hand-molded sushi. If I can find a video of how Nigiri sushi is prepared, I'll put a link to it in the description so you can, those of you who are interested, you can be sure to check it out. And Menchi says the test will conclude once she's full. And so the examinees get to their stations and begin the test. Now all the examinees except for one of them is just waiting around trying to figure out how to get started. That one person is Hanzo the ninja, who happens to be from Japan. That's his home country. And he's there, he's all giddy because he knows how to make the meal. But the problem with Hanzo is he's a very talkative guy, so he can't keep the secrets to himself, and it doesn't take very long for the people who are around him to notice, oh yeah, this guy, he knows how to make it. He already knows. So I guess people they just figure out something. I mean, thanks to him, they have some clue of what they're dealing with. Then we see Kurapika and Leorio. They are working side by side. Leorio has not figured out what the knives are for when this sushi is supposed to be hand molded. So he wonders if maybe the knives are used for cutting vegetables and meat. But what kind of meat? Kurapika hears this and mentions that he read somewhere that the rice is mixed with vinegar and combined with raw fish. And given that they're in a forest, there must be rivers and ponds full of fish. And Leorio, he can't keep this to himself. His big mouth, thanks to his big mouth, the other participants, they overhear this. And they dash out of the building back into the forest to look for fish. Leorio and Kurapika, they chase after them. And then we see several participants by a big pond and by a river catching some fish. Once they've got their fish, they hurry back to their stations. And the fish that they've caught is just this odd bunch of water creatures. And Menchi makes a comment to Buhara about sushi requiring seafood. And unfortunately for the examinees, all they have access to is freshwater fish. But Menchi is eager to try out whatever dish that the examinees will come up with. She won't pass up this chance to try something new, but Buhara is just there looking at her thinking, yeah, this is not going to go very well, because he knows Menchi very well. So he doesn't think this is going to pan out too good. So we see Liorio. He is the first one to have his dish all prepared. He goes over to Menchi with what he calls the Liorio special, and he presents it to Menchi. The dish is just a big heap of rice with live fish stuck in it. That's the Liorio special. And Menchi is not impressed at all. She just takes the dish and tosses it aside, and is quick to say whatever that was is not nigiri sushi. She tells Liorio that the shape is important, and the meal has to look like nigiri sushi. So Gon, he comes up next with his dish, but it's almost like Liorio's. The only difference being it's not a heap of rice, it's a live fish with a ball of rice wrapped around it. That's a nope for him as well. His dish gets tossed aside. And more examinees, they send their dishes, and they also fail. Kurapika, he's there, he thinks he's figured out a formula that incorporates the idea of shape, and he takes his dish to Menchi. But when we see Kurapika's dish, it looks exactly like Gon's dish, so of course he fails too. Then Hanzo steps up with his meal, which is a slice of fish over the rice. And Menchi looks at this and says, okay, yeah, this looks promising. She takes a bite, pauses, and then tells Hanzo, no, this is no good. And Hanzo, he just flips out, because he just, he tells Menchi that, sushi is just nothing but rice molded into an oblong shape, dabbed in with some wasabi, and topped with a slice of fish. Should be as simple as that. But this just sets Menchi off, and she counters by saying it'll take someone 10 years just to grasp the making of sushi. None of these examinees would stand a chance. And Buhara, he's just sitting there by the side. He's watching this, and he thinks Menchi is being unreasonable. And this is because her standards are very high. So high that only a handful of chefs in the entire world can match those standards. So again, what chance do these examinees have? They don't even know what sushi is. But the test continues. More meals are served to Menchi. She continues to try them out and fail the examinees, and the chapter comes to an end with Menchi announcing that she's full now. So the test has come to an end. Nobody has passed. After all that, nobody has passed. So we get to chapter 12. The chairman arrives. Picks up with Menchi. She's on the phone. She's got her cell phone. She's speaking to someone about her decision to not pass any of the examinees. She refuses to restart the test, and the examinees, they're just standing there watching all this. Can't believe that they've all failed. What do they do now? And the scene shifts over to a city. We don't get the name of the city, but in the city there's a hotel, and in the hotel there's a room where we see the person that Menchi is speaking to. It's the attendant from the tunnel who was giving out the badges that show the participants their numbers. That guy. So he notices that Menchi has switched off her phone. The call has ended, and the attendant, he informs his boss, the chairman. The chairman is an old man who is like crouching in the middle of this hotel room. He's crouching on one foot. and his other foot is like stretched out in front of him, balancing a tray, and on this tray is a glass of some unidentified drink that he's drinking through a straw. He's just balanced like that, no problem. This is the chairman, and the attendant tells him that it's clear that Menchi is not going to reverse her decision. And the chairman says, well, we might as well head over there to sort this out, because as exceptional as hunters may be, they can be a troublesome bunch sometimes. An incident like this has happened before and can happen again. So he and the attendants, they leave the hotel, they board a big airship which takes them to the exam site. So we shift over back to the exam site. One of the examinees has had enough of this test. This is number 255, Todo, the wrestler-looking guy. He just tells Menchi straight up that I didn't come here to cook. I want to be a blacklist hunter. So this whole test of cooking meals, preparing, searching for ingredients, I'm not up for this. But Menchi, she's just sitting there, she's unfazed, and she simply tells him, oh, that's too bad. You can always try next year. So this pisses off Todo. He rushes forward to attack Menchi, only to be sent flying out of the building by a slap from Buhara. Just one swipe, and the man just goes through one of the windows. He lands outside. Buhara tells Menchi, if I had not acted, you would have killed him. And we see that Menchi, she's seated on the couch, right? And her hands are behind her. And we can see that she's carrying 2 knives. Had Buhara not acted, she would have killed Todo with those knives. So she gets up and she tells the other examinees that it doesn't matter what kind of hunter they want to be. They have to be skilled in martial arts, which were just demonstrated by Buhara just now, who also happens to be a gourmet hunter. And Menchi adds that being a gourmet hunter is just as important as being a blacklist hunter, because gourmet hunters have to go out and find rare food, usually located in dangerous places. They are also called upon to search, to track down and deal with poachers. So, Menchi goes on saying, she expected the examinees to, at least demonstrate not just skill in martial arts, but the desire to try something new, which was, in this case, the test that she had set up for them to cook meals. And as she's going on, there's a voice that they hear, which comes from some speakers, which points out that, Menchi failing an entire group of examinees, it wasn't unfair though. And everyone looks up and they see that the voice is coming from the speaker of the airship. And some of the examinees, they recognize the logo that's on the side of the airship and point out that it's the logo of the Hunter Association. And it looks like the judging committee has arrived by airship. And then we get quite the entrance from the chairman. He jumps out of the airship and he lands right in the middle of the examinees. No problem, just like that. And Menchi, upon seeing him, she addresses him as Chairman Netero, head of the exam commission. Netero, he asks Menchi if she failed the examinees because of not having the desire to challenge the unknown as she had expected. And Menchi says no, she simply got upset because they made light of the test. And as someone who is very passionate about food, Menchi let her emotions get the best of her. So at this point she just decides to give up on being an examiner and undoes her decision. But Chairman Netero, he thinks this over and he suggests that Menshi should remain as an examiner but also take part in a new test. This way, the examinees might have a shot of passing the test. Menshi agrees to this, and for the new test, she says that they will try making boiled eggs, much to the confusion of the examinees. So there's a mountain way out in the distance. Menshi points to it and asks the chairman if they can get a lift via airship to that mountain. That mountain is known as Split Mountain, and it's named this because it is split in the middle into two equal halves, and in between these two halves there's a strong air current that's blowing through the ravine between these two halves. The airship lands on near the edge of one half of the mountain. The examinees, they follow Menshi out of the airship to the edge, and then she warns them about there's a fast moving river at the bottom of the ravine, and they should be careful not to fall off the edge. And she's saying all this while she's taking off her heels, her shoes, and then she leaps into the ravine. And the examinees, they look down and they think, oh yeah, she's just jumped to her death. But Netero assures them that Menshi will be fine. She has just entered the nesting area of a bird known as a spider eagle. What they do is they spin web across the ravine, and from this web they hang their eggs to prevent predators from the land reaching the eggs. So we see Menshi grabs hold of one strand of web, and then she makes her way to a clutch of eggs. She picks one and then gets back to the cliff, and she climbs all the way back to the top. Todo, the guy who was swatted out of the building at the exam site, he recovered and joined the group before they left for Split Mountain. He's there in the crowd watching what Menshi has pulled off, and much to his shock, he sees that Gon and his friends, they're eager to try collecting eggs. And because this is way more interesting as a test than the cooking that they were doing before, so we see Gon, his friends, and a number of examinees, they carry on with the test, while Todo and another group of examinees, they stay behind. And Netero just tells them, hey, there's no shame in giving up. They can always try again next year. So the first batch of examinees who went to get the eggs, they come back and they boil the eggs. And Menshi, she's holding 2 eggs just to show them the difference. There's a regular chicken egg, which is white, and then the spider eagle egg is brown in color. And the examinees, once their eggs are ready, they try them out, and they notice there is a big difference in taste. You have your, imagine the taste of a regular chicken egg, but when it comes to the spider eagle egg, they notice that they have a creamy texture, delicious creamy texture, unlike chicken eggs. A type of taste that just melts in your mouth. And Todo, he asks if he could try one out. Gon gives him half of his egg, and Todo, after tasting that egg, he admits that it's better for me to try this exam next year. I've accepted my loss. And so the chapter ends with a note about the number of examinees who've passed this new test. That number is 42. So those are the examinees who will move on. And we jump into chapter 13, A Game at Midnight, part 1. It's nighttime now. We see the airship continuing to make its way to the next exam site. The examinees are gathered in one room with Chairman Netero, who has a chance now to formally introduce himself to them. He is the chairman of the selection committee for this year's edition of the Hunter exam, which is the 287th edition of the Hunter exam. Can you believe that? 287. He was planning on not making an appearance until the final round, but well, plans changed because of Menji and her decision. So this is why Netero is here now. But the examinees are still on edge, despite Netero being all friendly and jovial with them. But he doesn't mind. He's going to be sticking around for the time being. His assistant is there. He lets the examinees know that the airship should be reaching its destination at 8 a.m. the next morning. So in the meantime, the examinees, they can mingle, hang around in the ship, enjoy the hospitalities. Killua and Gon, they still have plenty of energy, and Killua just says, "Hey Gon, you wanna explore the ship?" And they go off to explore the ship, while Leorio and Kurapika, after the day that they've just had, they are not as energetic. They just want to get some shut-eye and rest. But who's there but Tonpa? Tonpa's there. He tries to stir things up by making them worry. When Leorio, he asks how many phases are left to be done in the exam, and Tonpa says that the number changes from year to year depending on the examiners. Usually there are 5 to 6 phases, which would be all the more reason for Kurapika and Leorio to get some rest. But Tonpa tells them that just because we're on the airship doesn't mean that the airship isn't part of the third phase. So rather than going to rest, it would be a good idea to stay vigilant, stay on your toes, just in case an announcement is made. You don't want to miss the announcement and then fail and not be able to continue with the exam. So with that, Tonpa, he's starting to walk away, thinking that now I've got them, they won't have a chance to get some rest. Tonpa still doing his old tricks, he hasn't changed at all. So meanwhile, while the other examinees are taking this time to recuperate and recharge, we see in another room Menchi, Buhara and Satotsu. They're having their meals, and Buhara asks Menchi how many examinees does she think will pass the exam. Menchi doesn't give an exact number, but she has noticed that there are some special individuals in this crop of exam takers. They've displayed some powerful auras that they've noticed. Even Satotsu compliments this group of examinees. He's been impressed by participant number 99, that's Killua. Menchi says she was impressed by Hanzo for knowing what the meal she wanted was. At least she gives him props for that. And then Buhara says he's placing his bet on number 44, Hisoka the magician. And he noticed that Hisoka is not a rookie. He detected intense bloodlust from Hisoka. In particular, at the point where Todo was acting out in the forest. And Menchi and Satotsu, they comment that they noticed this bloodlust as well. And Satotsu adds that they better keep an eye on Hisoka because he's as strong as they are. And but unfortunately he chooses not to be on the good guy side. He prefers to work on the dark side. So they better keep an eye on him. And Satotsu adds that the hunter exam gives hunters an opportunity to find and face other skilled hunters, which is why someone like Hisoka is taking part in it. This is just his chance to face other powerful hunters. And speaking of Hisoka, we see him. He's sitting in a passage somewhere on the ship. He's just stacking up his playing cards, and once they fall apart, he just laughs by himself. And this makes some examinees who are near him very nervous. Can't really blame them because of who this guy is. And then elsewhere on the ship, we catch up with Gon and Killua. They're seated by a window looking down at the city that's all lit up at night. And as they're seeing this, Gon asks Killua about his parents, if they're still alive. And Killua gives this very odd answer. He says he's sure they're still alive. What's that supposed to mean? And Gon asks, okay, what do they do? And Killua simply tells him, his parents are assassins. His entire family is involved in assassination, and they have high expectations of Killua because he has a gift for it. But Killua just wants to live his life his own way. And when he told his family that this is his decision, they weren't too happy about it. And even his mother was visibly upset by this, saying Killua is throwing away his future by not wanting to become an assassin like them. And things got so bad that Killua ended up attacking his mother, slicing her in the face and stabbing his older brother in the side, and then he ran away from home. So he's here now, and he believes that if he can become a hunter, he will be able to apprehend his entire family, and the bounty that they've got combined would be enough for him to live in peaceful comfort. And Gon, he's listening to all this, but he's not shocked, he's not scared or anything. I guess who could blame him? He might be just taking all this in, and he doesn't know what to say to all this. His new friend here is from a family of assassins, and he wants to apprehend them once he becomes a hunter. What's up with that? So as the boys are chatting, you see Netero coming down the passage. He sees the boys, and then he focuses his gaze on them. It's almost like he's projecting his presence to them, and it causes the boys to immediately turn around, but they don't see anyone there because Netero has moved so fast that he's on the other side now. And once the boys turn around again, they see Netero and they ask him, did you notice someone was watching us? And he just says, no, I was just passing by, didn't notice anything. But Killua isn't fooled. He points out that you're pretty fast for an old man. And for a moment there's some tension between Killua and Netero. They're looking at each other, and there's sparks flying, and Gon is standing between them, not sure what's going on. He doesn't notice. And then Killua wants to know what Netero is up to. Why is he here? Netero, he just says, I'm just passing the time. And then he changes subject, and he asks the boys what they think of the exam so far. Gon says he likes that there aren't any written tests, and there's mostly lots of action. So the exam is thumbs up for him so far. But Killua is disappointed by it because he was expecting more of a real challenge. And when he asks the chairman if will things improve later on, is there going to be more of a challenge as we get further on into the exam, Netero doesn't give him a straight answer. He just says, we'll see. Killua doesn't like this answer, and he just tells Gon, "Okay, yeah, let's just go." Then Netero stops them and he says, "Okay, here's an interesting proposal. Let's play a game. If you win this game, I will give you your hunter licenses. Just like that, no strings attached. You get your hunter licenses. You become hunters right here on the spot. What do you say?" And upon hearing this proposal, the boys are interested. They agree to play this game with the chairman. So they move to another room, open space room, and Netero is loosened up. He's just removed some of his clothing. He's just in his vest and his pants. His shoes are off as well. Excuse me. And he's carrying a rubber ball, which will be part of the game. So this game will involve the boys trying to take the ball away from him. And if they succeed again, he'll give them their hunter licenses right there. So Netero says, "You won't be playing any offense, just defense. All the boys, all they have to do, just get the ball." So Killua decides to go first, thinking, this should be pretty simple, just get the ball from this old man. And what he displays is one of his assassination skills, a high-level technique known as rhythm echo. And with this technique, Killua is slowly moving, like in front of Netero. And as he's moving slowly, there are clones, like after images, I should say, of Killua developing as he's moving, not making any sound. And the chairman is very impressed by this, because a boy this young, knowing such an impressive technique, that's really something. And Gon is seeing this and he's wondering how Killua is doing that. So Killua, he gets close enough to reach Netero, but he fails to get him. He keeps trying, but he keeps failing, because no matter what he tries, Netero just dodges, weaves, gets out of the way, keeping the ball out of Killua's reach. So Killua decides to change tactics. He goes low and he kicks Netero in the leg. But it's Killua who's on the floor holding his own leg in pain. And the chairman comments that, that kick that Killua delivered would have shattered a normal leg, but it's a good thing his leg is pretty strong for an old man. So Killua, he's had his turn. He tags in Gon, and Gon, he immediately rushes for Netero. When he gets close enough to Netero, he suddenly jumps into the air, which catches the chairman by surprise. But what ends up happening is Gon, he jumps so high that he smacks the top of his head on the ceiling of the roof. Killua is by the side telling him, "You have to measure your distance properly. You caught Netero off guard when you got close enough to him. Try again." And Netero, he comments to himself that Gon might come off rather immature, but he's not dumb. He's got a brain, that head. And perhaps as the chapter comes to an end, Netero wonders if maybe he's found a worthy challenger, because Gon, he came so close to he caught him off guard actually, but had he not jumped in the air like he did, maybe he would have succeeded. And on a lighter note though, the chapter actually ends with Tonpa finding Leorio and Kurapika fast asleep somewhere, and he realizes his plan to trick them completely gone out of the window, failed. Then we move on to chapter 14, Game at Midnight, part 2. the game is continuing, and we see there's a clock on the wall, and it's 5 minutes after midnight now. Gon and Killua, they've worked up a sweat trying to catch that rubber ball from Netero, and it's even reached a point where he challenges them to come at him at the same time. They try that, but no luck. He's got an eye on each of them, and he still got the ball. Time moves forward. It's now 1:15 in the morning, and Netero, despite the time, he's still in fine form. It's just the boys who are struggling, and they have to try other tactics now. So Gon, he aims a right kick at Netero. Netero, he dodges Gon's leg, but what he doesn't dodge is the boot that, like Gon's right foot is holding onto his boot, he's taking it off, and he smacks Netero in the face with the boot. This catches Netero off guard. He doesn't see Killua coming from behind, who kicks him in the back. And Netero was unprepared. He didn't defend himself, so he lets go of the ball. This gives Killua a chance to grab the ball, but what Netero ends up doing is he kicks the ball out of Killua's reach, and the ball goes off to bounce on the wall ahead. And before it comes back to Netero, Gon has kicked off his other boot, and he smacks the ball with it so it goes in another direction out of Netero's reach. And the two boys, they now chase after the ball. They are just there to grab the ball, so close, but the chairman, he just bursts between them, and he goes on to grab the ball before they can get to it. But he commends them for the effort. And Killua, he looks back and he sees on the floor there's the imprint of a foot in the floor, and that's enough for him to say, you know what, I quit this game. You win. But Gon is surprised to see him that he's quit. They almost had the ball just now. But Killua points out that throughout the game, Netero has not used his right hand or his left leg. So even if they continued for an entire year trying to catch the ball, they wouldn't be able to catch that ball. And even Netero admits, I was just trying to hide not using his right hand and his left leg. But Killua noticed. Gon had noticed. So Killua, he's leaving, and he tells Gon, let's go. But Gon wants to stay. He says he's not interested in the ball now. He now wants to make Netero use his right hand. Killua, he's surprised by this, but he just says, okay, fine, you can stay and play the game. I'm going to sleep. And after Killua leaves, Gon asks Netero if he knows what that rhythm echo technique that he used. What is it? And Netero tells him that it's an advanced technique used by criminals. It's not for someone like Gon to use or learn. There's no need for him to do that. And the game continues for them. Then we see Killua. He's in the passageway, and this is where he shows his true emotions. And we see that he is very upset about losing to the chairman, being unable to catch the ball and earning that hunter license. But Killua is so lost in his thoughts and his anger that he bumps into two other examinees, number 390 and number 391. They see Killua and they notice, man, why is he all sweaty? What's up with him? And they call him out for being rude, for just bumping into them and not apologizing. But unfortunately for these two guys, those are the last things that they ever say, because Killua, he just kills them. Just slices them up with his left hand, and he's continuing to walk. He's got a smile on his face, thinking about Netero and the game that they're playing. These two guys, they've just been killed. just like that, gone. And Kilo admits that had he continued playing the game, he might have been motivated enough to kill the chairman just to get that ball. That's Kilo now. Just like that, 2 guys dead, just for calling him out for being rude. Gone, just like that. So we get back to the game. Gon is keeping up with the chairman. Netero goes this way, Gon is there, goes that way, Gon is there. But as far as grabbing the ball, Gon is nowhere near doing that. So he tries performing a feint, making Netero think that he's going to use his right hand. But instead, Gon launches forward to headbutt Netero in the gut. But this only hurts Gon. And yet he gets back up and he's going to try headbutting him again. And Netero observes that if Gon were to hit him again with that headbutt in the gut, he'll split his head open. And yet, if Netero were to relax his muscles, he'll be the one who gets seriously injured. So as Gon is coming towards him for that second headbutt, Netero dodges Gon by jumping over him, and Gon ends up crashing into the wall in front of him, and he hits it so hard that he busts his forehead open. But he's all smiles because he points out that when Netero jumped, he did it with his right hand. Like he used his right hand to bounce off Gon's back as he jumped over him. And this is when Netero realized, oh yeah, I used my right hand. And for Gon, he just celebrates like, oh, he won the game. But all he wanted at this point was to make the chairman use his right hand, and he succeeded in doing that. So as far as Gon is concerned, it's a win for him. And this is when all the exhaustion catches up with him, and Gon just slumps back and he falls asleep. And Netero, he gets to one wall where there's a telephone. He calls up the captain of the airship and he tells them, okay, since we're making good progress, could you just slow down the ship? Slow it down a little bit. And he checks the time and he sees that it's 20 past 5 a.m. So this might give the passengers plenty of extra time to rest. So we fast forward, it's 9 a.m. now. It's 9:30 actually. The examinees are woken up by an announcement through the speakers informing them that they have arrived at their destination. Kurapika and Lurio, they look out a window and they see is a tall, very tall grey structure ahead. The airship lands on the flat top of this structure. The examinees, they step out and we see Bobon, the snake charmer. He looks around and he notices we're in the middle of nowhere. Where are we? The assistant, the chairman's assistant, he's there. He tells the examinees that this place is known as Trick Tower and is the location of the third phase of the exam. The test, which as stated by the examiners of this third phase, will involve the examinees getting to the bottom of Trick Tower within 72 hours. And the chapter comes to an end with a sneak peek at 3 unnamed men who are somewhere in the tower. One of these men is bald, one man is spectacled, and then there's a third man who's got long spiky hair, and he's got a scar running down the left side of his face. We don't get their names, but they are aware that the airship has arrived, and as far as they're concerned, it's showtime. We get to chapter 15, the path of majority rules. So we see the airship is leaving the top of Trick Tower, and the examinees are left to look around, wondering how are they supposed to get to the bottom of the tower in 72 hours. There are 40 examinees who are present now, and as they're looking around, they notice that there's no entrance, there's no door, there are no stairs. It's just a flat top of this tower. And you see a couple of other examinees. They are looking down one side of the tower, and they just make a comment that maybe climbing down the side of the tower might not be a good idea, but it's a good idea for another examinee. This is number 86, who happens to be an expert rock climber. And Gon and Killua, they watch him as he's making his way down the side of the tower, and he's making progress. He's actually almost gone from sight. But then, speaking of Gon, he looks ahead and he sees something is coming. That something is a flock of winged creatures that are known as six-legged flying beasts. They are these giant monsters that have feathered wings, they have humanoid heads, and they've got sharp teeth. So they're coming towards the tower, and they are making a beeline for the rock climber number 86, who has made so much progress, to the point where he thinks, oh, I'll be the first one to reach the ground, until he turns around and he sees that he's surrounded by these flying beasts, and unfortunately for him, they grab hold of him and they tear him apart, while Leorio and Kurapika, they are watching. And Leorio, he confirms right there that climbing down the side of the tower is not a good idea. Meanwhile, Kurapika is looking around and he wonders if maybe there's a hidden entrance somewhere. Then we shift over to another examinee, Greta, the huntsman. He's the first one to find such a hidden entrance, which is in the form of a trapdoor. And he slips under the trapdoor. Nobody notices that he's found it or he's gone. And not long after that, Kurapika realizes that, wait a minute, the number of examinees is dropping. There are 23 remaining now. And this is when he suspects that, okay, there might be multiple trapdoors here now. Gon and Killua, they come over, and Gon tells them that, oh, they indeed found multiple trapdoors, but he isn't sure about which one they should use. So after this, the scene shifts to somewhere in the tower. We see those three men from the end of chapter 14. They are indeed the examiners for the third phase, and they've become aware now that the participants are finding their way into the tower. So it's time to begin the test. The bespectacled examiner, he whistles, and a group of hooded figures enters the room. They are hooded, and they also have their hands in handcuffs. So this examiner, he orders the hooded figures to take their positions. Then we shift back to the top of the tower. Gon and his friends, they found 5 trapdoors that are grouped together. And Gon mentions that he and Killua, they saw one examinee use a trapdoor. And when they tried that same trapdoor, it wouldn't open again. So Killua suspects that there's a trapdoor. Each trapdoor only works for one person. The group decides they'll each go through a trapdoor at the same time, even though there's a chance that their traps are waiting for them down below. But nothing ventured, nothing gained. So on the count of 3, they drop down through the trapdoors and they end up in the same room. It's a brick-walled room that doesn't seem to have any exits. On one side of the room, there is a message on the wall which says, "The path of majority rules. The 5 who drop into this chamber must find their way down together by consensus of the majority." And in front of that wall is a pedestal which has 5 devices that look like wristwatches. They not only display a timer which is counting down from 72 hours, but there are 2 buttons as well. One button is labeled X and the other button is labeled O. So the boys, they take the devices, they put them on. Despite that there are only 4 of them here at the moment, Kurapika doesn't think that they'll leave the room until they're joined by a 5th person. And then a voice suddenly speaks through, there's a speaker at the top of another wall, and it says that there are many ways down the tower, and each path has different requirements. This path is known as the path of majority rules, where the participants must work together in order to move forward. The voice wishes them good luck, and that's it. So until that 5th person comes along, Gon and his friends have to wait. And they wait for 2 hours. Nobody shows up. And Leorio, being, I guess he's the closest to being a hothead, he's getting frustrated now because he's wondering, okay, if the other participants, if they already found their way down the tower, or are they still at the top of the tower unable to find a trapdoor? And speaking of trapdoors, this is when one trapdoor is tripped and someone falls through, and the chapter ends with Tonpa, that guy, the rookie crusher, being revealed as the 5th man who falls through and joins Gon and his friends, who are just looking at this guy completely speechless. They were not expecting him at all. So chapter 16, which is called Enter the Taskmasters, begins with a look at the watch, at the time being displayed. It's now 69 hours and 17 minutes that are remaining. There are now 5 participants in the room, and the wrist devices, they all synchronize now that there are 5 participants. And one of the walls slides up to reveal a door. And who's the one who's eager to go forward already? It's Tonpa. While Gon and his friends, they still can't believe that he's the one, the 5th participant who showed up. Of all the people, it just had to be Tonpa. So on the door is a screen displaying an instruction. If they want to open the door, the participants must vote O or vote X to not open the door. Sounds simple enough as far as Leorio is concerned. He makes his vote, everyone else makes their vote, and the door opens. But the result of the vote is 4 O's to 1 X. And Leorio, he looks around and he asks, okay, who's the person who voted X? And Tonpa is the one who voted X, and he's all sheepish now, and he says, oh yeah, it was me, it was just a slip of the finger, it happens. But Leorio, gives him a light warning not to do it again. He's not buying this excuse that was a slip of the finger. So they exit the room and they find themselves in a corridor. Both left and right sides are blocked off. And on the wall in front of them is another screen displaying a question. Which way to go? Vote O to go right, or vote X to go left. The group make their decisions, and the result is 3 votes for O and 2 votes for X, which ticks off Leorio because he thought it was pretty obvious to go left. He doesn't trust, going to the right. But Kurapika tells him that there's some behavioral research which has been done, which highlights that most people who are lost tend to choose going left. Even Killua knows about this research, and both Killua and Kurapika had voted to go to the right. Tonpa hears this and he says, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And he thinks, maybe the examiners, they are also aware of this belief that, if you're lost, you go to the left. So they might have set this up just to frustrate the participants. So I guess it was a good thing that they chose going to the right. And what ends up happening is this right path, it leads the participants to a large room. It's bottomless, right? Except that in the middle there is a raised square platform. On this platform there is a screen, and at each corner of the platform is a burning torch. So Killua, he looks across to the opposite side of the room, and he points out that there are people there. Those people are 5 hooded figures who are just standing there. And one of those figures, he looks up at a camera nearby and asks for his handcuffs to be unlocked now that the participants have arrived. The request is granted, the handcuffs come off, and the hood is removed, revealing this bald-headed, jacked-up dude named Ben Dot. So Ben Dot, yeah, what a name. So Ben Dot announces that he and the hooded figures have been chosen by the exam commission to be taskmasters that each of the participants will face in one-on-one battles. The participants can decide the order of entry, and if they win 3 out of the 5 battles, they may carry on. The rules of the battles are pretty simple. You can fight using whichever style you want, whichever method you want. There will be no draws. You have to make your opponent admit defeat to win. So now it's time to vote. Will the participants accept the challenge? Vote O, vote yes with O, or vote X for no. The examinees, they vote yes to take part in this challenge. And then Ben Dot says, I'll be the first one to fight. I'll step up first. So which of the examinees will be facing him? And to Leorio's surprise, it's Tonpa who steps forward. And he just says, oh, this is a chance for him to have a good look at, what kind of opponents they're dealing with. And, besides, since clearly the others don't trust him, it would probably be a good idea if he went out now rather than later, where if there's a tie and they need someone to break the tie, and they are left with Tompa. It probably wouldn't be a great idea. They wouldn't trust him to break the tie, so he just decided, let me go first. So Tompa, from where they're standing, the edge where they're standing, a narrow walkway extends from the edge all the way to the square platform. The same thing happens on the other side. Tonpa crosses it, he gets to the platform, and he faces Ben Dot. And Ben Dot, he decides what kind of battle they will be having. It will be a battle to the death. So this battle will go on until one of them either forfeits or dies. And Gon and his friends, they are shocked by this because the guy who's representing them, Tonpa, he, rather than cower away or decline, he accepts the condition for this battle, much to their shock. But it's all good for Ben Dot. He appreciates that Tonpa is willing to display such courage to compete in this battle to the death, and he lunges forward to try and attack Tonpa to start the battle, only to stop when he sees Tonpa is now down on his hands and knees, and he immediately forfeits, allowing Bendot to claim first victory. And the hooded figures on the other side, they earn the first point. So Tonpa, he leaves the platform. He joins Gon and his friends, trying to act all innocent, saying, "Oh no, I couldn't face that guy. He looked too powerful for me. It was a good thing I forfeited." But Leorio, he's had enough of Tonpa's games, and he confronts him, saying he knows what he's up to. He's deliberately screwing things up for the participants. And this is where Tonpa's act, just falls to the side now, because there's no use pretending. And the hooded figures are watching all this happening, saying, "Oh, there's already some trouble between the participants, which should make things much easier for the figures to win this test if the participants are already fighting with each other." And then Tonpa simply tells Leorio that unlike him and his friends, Tonpa has no interest in becoming a hunter. And this is where chapter 16 ends. And we get to the final chapter of volume 2, chapter 17, Desperate Choice. And it begins with Tonpa going into his reasons for not wanting to become a hunter. He says he's only in the exam basically just to have fun. He has avoided all those applicants who have proved to be very dangerous merely by keeping his distance and blending in with the crowd. And as time has gone on, Tonpa has seen many young hopefuls getting their dreams crushed, failing exam after exam, and it has reached a point where Tonpa gets a thrill out of seeing someone fail, which is why he has continued to take part in the exams. And he has also, developed this habit of purposefully causing trouble for rookie examinees just to see them fail. And he says usually at this point in the exam, he would have, given up and called it quits. But because of the current situation where he is part of this majority rule game, he has to stick around. And what's curious about this part is only Leorio is the one who's visibly annoyed by this. The others, Gon, Kurapika, Killua, they just look at Tonpa. They don't argue, they don't get angry, they don't react in any other way. So it just made me wonder, what were they thinking upon hearing that one of the fifth participant who has joined them, he's a complete scumbag and he's purposefully ruining their chances of making it through this exam. And we see the hooded figures, they watching what's going on with the participants. And as far as the figures are concerned, as long as the participants continue to waste time arguing with each other, more time will be wasted. And that means their prison sentences will get shorter. And this is where we find out that these hooded figures are indeed prisoners who are serving very long prison terms. So long that their combined sentences total over 100 years. And then we see in another room someone who is watching through a number of monitor screens. That someone is the bespectacled examiner from earlier. We get his name. He is Lipo or Ripo. He is seated in that room. He's watching all the monitors, everything that's going on in the tower. And we learn that Lipo is a blacklist hunter and is also a prison warden who made a promise to the 5 prisoners that he will shorten their sentences by 1 year for each hour they use to delay the examinees. And we go back to Bendot and the other prisoners. Bendot, he he has to put the handcuffs back on, but it's not a problem because things look to be going in favor of the prisoners because examinees are there arguing, thanks to Tonpa and what he's up to. And Bendot also thinks that things are in their favor because two of the examinees are children, Gon and Killua. Little does Bendot know who they are. And so he thinks that they'll be stuck here for the entire 72-hour period, which means 72 years shaved off of their sentences. Bendot, as we find out now, that he's serving a 199-year sentence for robbery and theft. 199-year sentence just for stealing stuff. The next prisoner who's going to take part in the next battle, he asks for his handcuffs to be removed. He takes off the hood and he makes his way to the platform. This man, dark-haired, slender man, his name is Sedokan, and he's serving a 149-year sentence for being a serial bomber. This is Sedokan. So we switch back to the participants, and Kurapika reveals that he overheard the prisoners as they were talking, and he's found out that they are prisoners, and he figures out that he's figured out their plan of wanting to waste time just so that their sentences can be reduced. And this is where, Killua, he commends Tonpa for his tactic of forfeiting his match against Bendot, because Killua has noticed that Bendot looks like he could be a former soldier, maybe even a mercenary, and chances are he would have captured Tonpa and tortured him just to pass the time. So, Tonpa, upon hearing this, he starts acting like, oh, I knew that the whole time. I decided to forfeit just to avoid getting captured by Bendot. I guess this was just played out for comedy because it's only him and Diorio who get this part. But I just thought it was pretty funny that Tonpa, as underhanded as his plan had been, it turns out that it actually it saved his life, right? So Killua, he asks who will go next to face Sedokan, and this is Gon's time to volunteer, and this is mainly because he doesn't think Sedokan looks all that bad compared to Bendot. So Gon proceeds to the platform to meet Sedokan, and Sedokan just tells him, I'm not an action guy, even though Gon happens to be an action guy. But Sedokan proposes, okay, let's have a simple game that works for both of us, and this game will involve 2 candles that Sedokan holds up for Gon to see, and Sedokan says that each of them will light a candle and keep it lit until one of those candles goes off. Whoever has the candle that goes out, they lose. No problem for Gon, until Sedokan shows him the candles that he's holding. The candle that's in his right hand is short. The one that's in his left hand is a much longer candle, and he asks Gon to pick the candle. He can pick whichever size. If he wants the long candle, he should vote O. If he wants the shorter candle, he should vote X. And Gon's friends, they're watching this and they've realized that this is a trap, because the obvious choice normally would be the long candle, since it will burn longer. But then there's also a chance for the shorter candle to be the the right one, with the longer candle being the trap. And this is where Sedokan, realizing that Gon's friends have noticed that, this is a trap, he just says, you know what, just take your time, figure out which candle that you want to pick. It's no problem for him. And Kurapika and his friends, they are aware now that Sedokan is just doing this just to pass the time, to make sure that he gets his life sentence reduced. So Kurapika just declares, Gon, you make the decision. Whatever choice you make, we'll vote that way. And so Gon chooses the long candle for the simple reason that it will burn longer. So his friends, not surprised, they vote for the long candle. So Sedokan gives Gon the long candle. They each approach a corner with the burning torches. They light the candles at the same time, and the game begins. So far so good for Gon. Killua wonders how long does a candle take to burn out, and Kurapika has to tell him maybe 5-6 hours, regular candle. And then suddenly a breeze blows through the room and it bothers the candles. Gon is able to steady the flame of his candle for a moment, but then all of a sudden the flame on his candle flares up and the wax starts melting rapidly. And Leorio suspects that the candle might have some kind of accelerant. There's no way a regular candle would be burning so fast, and it gets to the size of a stub, a very short candle. And Leorio thinks Gon should have chosen the shorter candle after all. But this is where Sedokan reveals the gimmick of his game. He doesn't, he's just speaking to himself. He's pleased by this because it turns out that both candles are gimmicked, are traps, and that he has 2 other candles in his back pocket. They are hidden by his shirt, and all these candles were soaked in oil, so whichever candle that Gon would have chosen, it wouldn't have worked. And so Sedokan is patting himself on the back for this brilliant plan. And then he sees Gon has got a big grin on his face, and he doesn't understand why is he grinning. His candle is almost out, but Gon, he places the stub of his very short candle on the floor, saying, this candle is burning so fiercely it would take a very strong wind to blow it out. And he makes a quick dash to Sedokan. Just the speed just catches Sedokan off guard, because one moment Gon was on the other side and he's right next to him at this point, and what Gon simply does is blow out the candle in Sedokan's hand, and the game comes to an end. And this is where the chapter ends, with Gon celebrating that, hey, I won, game over. And Lippo, the examiner who's watching this, he makes a compliment to Gon, saying, yeah, this kid is quite impressive. And that's where chapter 17 and volume 2 come to an end. I think compared to volume 1, this volume in particular was heavy as far as character dialogue and setting things up. It wasn't as swift to get through like volume 1. It certainly wasn't as grim, even though volume 2 started with the massacre that Hisoka did to the other examinees, and we also saw Killua killing two innocent examinees just like that. And the other examinee, the rock climber, who gets ripped apart by flying monsters, I should say. But otherwise, overall, it was a relatively mild volume. It had parts with some comedy in it, and it was very light, and it even ended on a good note with Gon getting a victory for his team, compared to volume 1, which ended with Hisoka showing up aiming to kill Leorio and Kurapika. So I guess for the time being we're still being eased into the world of Hunter X. Things have not gotten crazy just yet, despite everything that has happened so far. So I'm happy about that. So we've come to the end of this episode. This would be normally where I read your feedback, but there's no feedback yet. But I will remind you that if you want to send any feedback about Hunter x Hunter or any other manga titles that we'll be covering in this series, in the description you will find an email address, multimangaverse@xmail.net. That's where you can send in all your feedback. Next episode we are looking at volume 3, which contains chapters 18 to 26. So if you have a copy of the volume, or if you can borrow it, find it online, however you do it, you can start reading now, and you can start sending in your feedback, so that for the next episode, once there's any feedback, I'll read it at the end of the episode. Just please make sure to include your name and where you're writing from, so that I know who sent which piece of feedback when I read it. Also in the description, if you would like to support the series, there are support links there. Have a look at them. There's my contact email as well. If you have any questions about the series or anything, you can contact me there. Okay, so this is the end of episode 2. Thank you for listening. I hope you'll catch me for episode 3, then episode 4, and after that we get to the other manga title that I will be covering in this series. Hoping you are looking forward to that. Okay, have a good day, have a good night, have a good weekend. Take care.